This is the Norris Group's Real Estate Investor Radio Show, the award-winning show dedicated to thought leaders shaping the real estate industry and local experts revealing their insider tips to succeed in an ever-changing real estate market. Hosted by author, investor, and hard money lender, Bruce Norris.
Hi, thank you for joining us. My name is Bruce Norris, and today our special guest is Rick Solis. Rick is a retired appraiser, investor, teacher, property manager, and I think the emphasis is on he's really happy that it's the retired part.
Yeah, I don't do any of that anymore. I'm an investor still, but I don't do any of the other stuff.
Okay.
And I love that.
And we just talked to you. You did it when you were 48, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's an amazing accomplishment. First of all, just being able to do that. But I know that you've done this kind of a plan. I remember you and I did an interview once, and you told me that you were reading some kind of financial books when you were like 12 or 13.
Yeah, I was a freshman in high school, and it was Think and Grow Rich.
Think and Grow Rich. And how did that even come on your map? You didn't have that in a discussion group in your freshman high school group, that's for sure.
My Uncle Will has always been an entrepreneur and investor, and I don't have a clue how he ever stumbled into that life because he had nobody in his life that did that. But he handed me that book and had me read it, and that book was pretty dry to get through at 14. That was a challenge, but I did it. My high school class did not enjoy that at all because it was an oral book report, and I put the class to sleep. There was nobody that liked that book.
Well, it is a little dry for 14. As a matter of fact, even thinking about the concepts,
I didn't even understand a lot of it.
Well, yeah, because that's really talking about contemplating a future that doesn't exist yet.
Yes.
And so you're really having to think about writing down goals as if they exist. And I don't even know how you would contemplate what the goal list would be at 14.
Well, actually, I had a pretty good goal list.
Really?
Yeah, I did not. I was always a lazy kid, so I knew I didn't want to work late in life. And I had some grandparents that had an RV, and I took a trip with them when I was 8 years old. And I was like, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. My grandparents were both retired Marines, and they had an RV, and they would just travel around. And I was like, that's what I want. That's the life I wanted. So I kind of decided that in the summer of 1976, because they were Marines, and that was bicentennial. So I remember everything was 200 year anniversary for America, and that was their whole summer basically. And I spent the summer with them, and I was 8 years old at the time.
I was going to say that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Now, when you say you're lazy and you worked hard enough to retire to 48, those two don't go together. So you're willing to go through some stuff you don't like to get to where you want to go.
I'm willing to go through some unpleasant stuff to get to where I want to be.
Okay. And
I've always been a planner. And there's a fable that I always like. It's like a little kid story, and I love it. And I always tell my kids, you guys should know this. And it's the grasshopper and the ant.
Okay.
And I've always been the ant.
I don't even know what that is.
The ant just like works all summer and saves up all his like food, and the grasshopper's out playing and running around, and then winter comes, and the ant's got all his food, and he's like comfortable, and he's just doing nothing in his like little house, and the grasshoppers are all dying off because they didn't save for winter.
Okay.
And so I always love that. Grasshopper and the ant.
And how did you end up with real estate as being the tool? Was your uncle in that?
Yeah, he was in real estate, so he kind of got me interested in that. My mom was a loan processor, so she got me interested in doing appraisals. And I think I dropped out of high school, so I was 17. And I'm doing part-time job delivering newspapers at night. So I'm up all night, and TV stations ended at 11:30 after the news went off. The only thing that was on after 11:30 infomercials. Dave Delgado.
I knew that was coming.
And Tom Boo. And so I'm 18. There's Tom Boo on his yacht with a dozen bikini-clad girls and his cars. And I was like, you know what? I want the girls. I want the yacht. I want the cars. I want all of that. And so I bought those infomercials. And, I remember I made $16 a day delivering newspapers, $480 a month. And that seminar probably cost me a month or two of money.
Wow.
And they were not good seminars. They were big books, but giant, huge font on the print, double spaced, no type, nothing on the back page. I mean, it would all really fit into a small paperback book. But that first course I took really got me on the road. And
Sort of the inspiration of the concept. When did you buy your first house? Was it for a rental or for a flip?
I bought my first house in 1988, and I bought that I was going to rent it, because all these books talked about just acquiring everything you could. And if you got $1 million in debt, eventually you'd be a millionaire. So the first one I bought in 1988 was a rental, and that one worked out so well. In the rest of 1988, I just kept buying tons of rentals, and I was really focused on no money down. So I loaded up in 1988, 1989,
right at the peak,
1990, and I had tons of stuff. And the stuff you could buy for no money down back then was basically all of San Bernardino. You can get that stuff all day, every day for nothing down. And I just had all kinds of nasty, terrible shacks in Muscoy, and I had stuff on Waterman. I had just all the bad stuff in San Bernardino.
And it was a peak market at that point, right?
It was rough.
Okay.
And the tenants back then, they're all in welfare, 100%. I never had anybody ever come to me. And I think at one point I had about 20 units. And I never had a tenant show up that had a job. Never, ever. They were all in welfare, 100%. And they got paid twice a month. Half on the first,
Section 8
half on
then
the 15th.
too?
A little bit of Section 8, but I didn't do that much. I mainly did welfare. So I had to show up on the 1st, and I had to show up on the 15th. And, I'm 20, 21, 22.
Wow.
And these are long-term welfare recipients living in my houses in their 30s and 40s. And they've known how to work the system for decades, and I'm showing up trying to get the rent. And
you get every excuse in the world. Why can you wait?
And, I'm buying it because I'm like, oh, yeah, your husband died? Oh, okay. I won't get the rent this time. And it just everything. Yeah, just every single.
He dies a lot.
Yeah. And then I think about it, though, I was kind of crazy because I'm 20 years old and I'm walking around with the rent from 20 houses in cash in my pocket, and all these tenants knew I had all this money. I don't know how I didn't get shot and killed back then, because I'd have, a few $1,000s in the worst neighborhoods of San Bernardino in my pocket on the 1st and the 15th, which usually worked out to be the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th. Before I knew it, I was out there almost every day collecting rent because they didn't always have it.
That's a lot of experience to have in your early 20s.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I lost a good chunk of that stuff. I gave some of it away. I held on to a few, but by the middle of the 90s, I only had 1 or 2 left, and it was the good ones. And, I knew a lot of stuff by the mid-90s.
One to respect cycles, too.
Yes, I really did. I was gun-shy.
I could have traded you a couple custom homes for some of your stuff.
Yeah, well, I made smaller mistakes, and my stuff was all subject to, so I was able to trade some of it. Or there was one I was afraid because it was one of my early ones I was going to let go, and I was like, I don't know, even just taking this subject to, if this is going to come after me somehow. So I remember I deeded it to the welfare tenant. She was so happy. I said, hey, do you want this? Here's the payment. It's yours. And she was already 2 or 3 months behind on her rent. Oh, great. So I took her down to the recorder's office, recorded a deed, and gave that to her. And I probably could have, now that I thought about it, I could have sat back and collected rent for a year or two and just let that go. But, I was young. And I didn't want that coming back on me.
Yeah, no point in doing that business model either. Okay, so you get all the way up to, you took a seminar early 2003 or something like that? Our title was something like How to Make $1 Million in the Next.
Oh, yeah. In How to Make $1 Million in a Year or two.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I'd lost so much money flipping houses that I became an appraiser too. So I was appraising, and then I was kind of a landlord on the side. And I was still buying, I was still investing the whole time. I'm buying loans, I'm buying rentals, and doing that kind of stuff. But I'm not really aggressive. It's just a sideline thing for my appraisal business. So I took some of your classes at Nick Manfredi's club. When it first opened up, you had some classes and you had some books on tape and stuff, and I bought those. And I took your boot camp, and then I started buying more houses once I took your boot camp. Like, instead of buying maybe 1 or 2 a year, I was buying a couple a month with another investor, and we were flipping most of those. But then I took your seminar about how to make $1 million in, it was a year or two, I forgot how long the term was, but it was basically just hold them.
Yeah, the last couple of years of the price boom.
So we held them. I mean, we held as many as we could. We were holding some at the time, but maybe we'd get 5 and sell 4 and keep 1. But once we did that, we would get 5 and keep all 5. And we waited, and we started selling them in like 2005 and 6.
So, I mean, that was a good pocket of profit for you guys.
It was huge.
Okay.
I mean, you would buy a house, and I remember at the time I could get a hard money loan from you, and I would buy a house worth like 150, and you'd lend me 90, and I was buying it for 80, and so I was walking out of escrow with money in my pocket, and the tenant was covering the payment, and then we'd turn around and sell it, and a year or two later make an extra $150,000, and it was just there was so much money to be made, and I really thought we were geniuses in 2004, 5, and 6. It's like, wow, why would anybody do anything but this?
Well, when I wrote that crash report, I mean, I know you were there. Did you get hurt by the downturn?
I got really hurt, and it was mostly because of greed. And the part that hit me, because I sold all the stuff I wanted to sell in 2006, but I didn't want to pay the taxes. And that was my downfall. So I did the taxes on some of them. Like, I probably had half of my assets in an IRA. So all those I sold, and I didn't pay any tax on that.
Right.
The other half I sold, and I took the profits, and I always taken my profits and invested in something that's cash flowing and give me a check. I never spend the money. But then the last approximate fourth, I 1031 into other things that I thought would weather the storm, and those did not weather. Those were a debacle.
And that was, you did this 1031 exchange in California, or?
I did some in California, so I would find a house that was maybe worth $250, and I'm paying $200, and so I'm 1031 in this, and I'm thinking, you know what? Worst case, if this is anything like the last downturn, maybe I'm going to lose 20 or 30%. So rather than pay the tax, and I thought, you know, I'm going to pay the tax. Time I'm all done, I'm going to end up with maybe 150 in assets or less. But this way, I'm going to 1031. I'm going to get this thing, and maybe it's going to drop to 175, and I'll just weather this, and I'll get out the other side, no problem. And some of that worked out okay. The ones that I messed up on was if I would 1031 and buy 3 houses and pay cash for 2, and then the last one put all the debt on the last one, it was the last one that killed me. So maybe I had a house worth 250 and I'd get a private loan for 175, and that was fine until that 250 house. I had a few of those that dropped down to like 75 grand. They were in Apple Valley,
right?
And that my payment's $1,200, and I was getting $1,200 in rent, and that model works great when you're going to be in and out in a year. But if you're holding that for like a decade, $1,200 a month rent. First, the rent's dropped 30 or 40%, so I'm getting $900 within a couple years. And when you're holding that long, roofs wear out.
Yeah, maintenance and all that.
Yeah, and water heaters.
And people move out.
Yes. Things that don't occur in a year. When you're in a 10-year span, you will be replacing the air conditioner. You will be replacing the water heater. You will be replacing all the appliances. You're probably replacing the heater. If you're in the high desert, there's a good chance you're replacing a roof. I mean, if that's a 10-year-old roof now and you're going to hold it for 10 years, most of those roofs aren't going to make it 20 up there.
Right. So if you had to do it differently, what would you do?
I'm doing it differently now.
Okay. So let's talk about that. Now, first of all, you formed a partnership that really worked well.
Yes.
When very few do.
It was amazing. I don't know how that worked out, because everything that I'm really good at, she was not good at. And all the stuff I'm terrible at, she's a master at. And I don't know how we got that to work. It was just, it was really fortunate for both of us. We both walked away from not having to work again.
That's pretty cool.
It was amazing.
And so you started building inventory at what point again?
Well, the second time I'm basically stopped doing appraisals in 2004, and I'm almost retired at that point. I have all these rentals, and I'm just sitting and waiting for them to sell. And so I stopped about 2004. By 2008, everything that I invested in that cash flow had blown up in my face. So by 2008, I'm back to appraisals, and I'm seeing the market crash, and I'm just like, man, I don't know like where the bottom of this. You know, I'm watching people buy stuff for, they think they're going to sell it for 150 in 2008. By the time they get to the finish line, they're getting 130.
Right.
And so I was nervous. So I think we waited till about 2009. She's a little more aggressive than me. So I think in 2009 she started buying. By 2010, late 2009, I started shopping and I bought a few. But by 2010, we just went nuts, and we were starting to buy maybe one every week or two. And we bought from 2010 and 11.
Well, most of that was REO or short sale inventory?
It was 100% REO.
Okay.
I think we did one mailer, and we bought a few from that mailer. The mailer worked great at the time. I think we'd send out like 200, and we got 2 or 3 houses from that. Now you'd probably have to send out 10,000 to get 2 or 3 houses.
Yeah. How did you choose the high desert?
That was a terrible mistake.
Okay.
Because had I not chosen the high desert, I would have been able to leave earlier, and I would have left with way more money, probably 3 times as much. But I chose the high desert because it worked really good for me last time, and I was copying Tony Alvarez's model. And I thought, he did so good in
Lancaster.
Yeah, and I don't want to compete with him, but the high desert of Sperry and Victorville is almost the same market. Yeah. And it worked so well for us from 2001 to 2006. I thought, you know what, I'm going to make a home run up here. We did well, but the houses that we bought in Rialto at the same time, one house in Rialto was worth, the profit was worth 4 houses in the high desert. So I could have bought, instead of getting 50 up in Hesperia, we could have done 20 in Rialto and Fontana. It would have been way easier to deal with, way less tenants, way better tenants.
Right.
And we would probably make way more money. And by the end of those 50 houses, we were dying. Like, I was so stressed out dealing with just the worst of the worst tenants. The tenant quality declined substantially in the 10 years that, from 2006 to when we were getting out in 2016, the tenants were just awful.
Wow. Even though the economy was better.
The internet now has made it so that people can just Google how to not pay rent, how to fight an eviction.
Oh, okay.
And so we were dealing in early 2000s. We're dealing with a lot of retirees moving up there, a lot of people with 2 jobs, a truck driver and a wife that works part-time for the school or something. By 2016, we're dealing with the Jerry Springer audience, basically. It's awful up there. And even when you think you've got a good tenant, what moves into your house will not be what's living there 2 or 3 years from now. So the husband and wife will probably be divorced within that 2 or 3 years, and there'll be somebody else living in that house, and maybe both those spouses are gone. And I just had a lot of that, and it was tough. And whoever I rented to, whatever job they had, they would not have that job 2 or 3 years from now. So I couldn't get a judgment and try to collect that from them because it was too much effort. So.
Yeah, never going to get. When I put together partnerships years ago, if I had a 5-year partnership, everything that you're talking about would happen within the partnership. Someone would die. Someone would get divorced. Someone would go broke and need their money back or something. And you go, oh my God, that's part of life.
Changes.
So
I don't regret it. I wouldn't go back to the high desert. In fact, I don't even, when I go to, I love Vegas, but I'm thinking I'm going to fly because I don't even want to drive past.
You don't want to see.
Of that.
That's how I feel about Palm Springs. That's the bad effect of 1990 to 92.
Wow,
I don't want to see the 111 ever again in my life.
25 years later, you're still remembering that.
I drove there every day going, well, I wonder what's going to change today. No one wants what I have. That's funny. You always chose to manage them yourself, though.
My partner managed most of them. So she probably did 75% of the management, and I did 25%. And a good chunk of my 25% would be, I don't want to deal with this, and I'm putting it with a property manager.
Okay.
But I did a lot of the field stuff. Since I was doing appraisals, I was up there a lot. So if someone needs to knock on the door because the tenant's not paying the rent, I was there. If someone's meeting a contractor, I was there. I did a lot of that. There was houses that I'd been to 50 times and she hadn't seen by the end, but she dealt with the paperwork and the phone calls, and I hate that. I like the field part. I don't like the and the evictions. She's dealing with all that, and I didn't enjoy that.
Okay.
But she was really good at that.
So what is she up to now?
She is very.
We didn't say her name. Is that important?
We cannot.
I
she
thought
does not like sharing details about her life.
Okay.
But she sold her stuff and she moved to Arizona, where life is way easier as a landlord, and she has, I think, a dozen really nice rentals, and she just lives off that, and she's doing some stock market trading.
Okay.
And just living a perfect life.
And she's pretty young.
She's 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's That's really young. I mean, that's.
I'm so happy for her.
Yeah.
Like, I don't. We both got so.
But she's a hard worker too, right?
Oh, way harder than me. I mean, I always like joke around, but if we were superheroes, I mean, she's definitely Batman and I'm Robin. I mean, I knew how to do all this stuff when we started, and she didn't know anything. But by the end, she knew way more than I ever did, and she did most of the work and the heavy lifting. I would even say on the deals we found, she probably found 60%. I found 40.
I know she was pretty good at negotiating. Really tenacious.
Yeah, and I saw her get houses at 50 cents on the dollar, and people hug her afterwards and want on vacation with her. And I'm just not like that.
Like a female version of Tony Alvarez.
Yeah, exactly.
No, when did you start selling?
We started selling early for two reasons.
Okay.
One, I had a number in mind that I needed to be done with. And I did not want to be greedy again like 2006. This is the number I need. With that number, I'm out. The other thing was the tenants and the rentals were just wore us down. We couldn't go any farther. And we knew we were walking away from millions of dollars. If we could have just held on another 2 years, we would have made way more. But it was enough money for both of us. And we just got out. So we sold, I think we sold about a fourth, the worst headache fourth in 2014. 2015, we sold the next pile of problems. And then 2016, we got rid of almost everything else. There was a few that got held over into 2017, but very few. And they're all gone. I mean, I have 2 rentals left, and that's it. And I think that's the number for me.
And you were just 2?
Yeah. Oh, well, I might even have to get rid of those 2 also because I don't have enough money coming in to take me through to where I need to be. So I'm going to probably run a little short in 2 or 3 years. And so I'm either going to have to borrow a little money or sell those 2. But I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. And if I did buy more, they wouldn't be here.
Now, you've seen a lot of different philosophies of investors because you did appraising for all of our borrowers. But
that was the best.
Yeah.
That was the one big perk of doing appraisals.
Exposure to all those guys.
Yeah,
now,
I saw everybody's
so
business plan.
You have a Mike Cantu is going to have his pile of rentals for the rest of his life.
It's genius. I love his model.
Okay.
It's not for me.
It's not for you. But see, that's, I like that. You and I are kind of similar in, I think, the intent of what real estate was supposed to do for us. I get the idea Tony Alvarez loves real estate. Mike Cantu loves real estate. I still love it. I love what real estate did for me. But
yeah, I see that. You've mentioned that a few times. There was a time I loved it. It's all I ever talked about. This last downturn with the tenants in Hesperia just wiped me out. Like by the end, I hated it. I don't enjoy real estate anymore.
Yeah, I enjoyed what it did. There were times, I went on vacation. I mean, you'd pass a fixer-upper in another state, and you're like, you just it's in your blood, and that's what you were going to do.
It feels so good to not do that anymore.
Yeah,
I've pass them down. I'm like, oh well.
Yeah, have at it, somebody.
Yeah, I'll take pictures and post the phone number on my Facebook for everybody else to chase. But I have no interest.
Well, I appreciate you coming in today and sharing that journey. And in the next segment, we're going to talk about so what now. So what do you invest in if it's not flipping houses and the vehicle you chose to do it in and stuff. So, Rick, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Sure.
For more information on hard money loans and upcoming events with the Norris Group, check out thenorrisgroup.com. For information on passive investing with trust deeds, visit tngtrustdeeds.com.